If you haven't seen my previous video, it's no big deal, but I explained how I replaced the rack and pinion on my Ford Taurus, and in the process, I could not get one of the subframe bolts out. I mean, I tried my best, and I grabbed the biggest ratchet I could find with an impact socket, and I got under there, and guess what happened? Broke it right on off. Now here's a problem when you do that. This piece here, as you can see, is very well rusted in there. This sits in a little collar up in, well, that's what we're about to find out. Where is the other end of this bolt? You break that part off, this is loose. You cannot use an easy out on that. There's just no way to grab it and get this out. And I mean, if that much torque couldn't get it out, an easy out sure as hell is not going to. So what do? You need to get to the top side of this so you can pull it out and put a new bolt in its place. I'm going to show you how I did it on the Taurus, and this should apply to most vehicles. I'm talking about one of the rear subframe bolts. This is on the passenger side of this particular vehicle. So what I did was, I measured from the center of that bolt underneath the car to a known point. Now that known point, in my case, happened to be where the floors were kind of rotted out. It was pretty easy to take a tape measure and find a spot that I could then match up from the top side, from inside the car. However, if you don't have rusted out floorboards, hopefully, what you can do after you pull the carpet up and everything, being careful of whatever's underneath. There may be fuel lines and things like that, which we're going to see a little mistake I made later on. We'll get to that. But what you can do, once you know you've got a clearing, is drill a small hole and measure from that bolt to that small hole. Then you go inside the car and measure from that small hole the same distance, and now you'll find, okay, that bolt must be under here. This is where we need to cut the sheet metal. Now I started simple. I used a 2.5-inch hole saw. I started with one hole, and as you can see here, I was able to see the actual bolt. Now, to get to that bolt, or to at least be able to shear it off, I needed a bigger hole. So I started out, I drilled 2 more holes, made a weird little triangle. Then I kind of trimmed it up a little bit so I didn't cut my arms up too badly. And then I took my angle grinder. Now I happened to be out of cutoff wheels at that moment, so I just used the grinding disc. And as you can see, the hole still wasn't quite wide enough for my angle grinder to get in there, so it made its own hole. But I was able to then grind off that little collar that this guy sits inside. It's what keeps it from moving, but it's supposed to move a little bit this way so that you can catch it when you're putting a new bolt in or rethreading the original bolt. So I was able to cut that. As you can see here, I was able to bend that up out of the way, and then this slid right on out. With that out of the way, I thought I would do just like the OEM and take a small piece of metal, take a nut, weld it on there, and then put it in that same place, bend that little collar back over, and then weld that back into place, allowing that nut to still move freely as the original did. Then, from underneath the car, I just threaded a bolt in there. Really, that's all there is to it. If you want to weld a piece to cover that, you can. What I ended up doing, and that's not pictured here, I laid some rubber down and I caulked all around that spot some of the other holes that were underneath after I stuck some sheet metal to fill that in. As you can see here, I did weld a little bit of a floor pan in there so that people's foot aren't going to go through the floor. And then I laid the rubber on top, caulked every opening to avoid any carbon monoxide entering the vehicle, as well as moisture. Is it a permanent fix? Certainly not, but I'm not the best welder in the world, and I'm certainly not a body man, so I did what I could with what I had available. So now the car is sealed up and there's a proper bolt in there. The only caveat, I couldn't easily find an original bolt for this application, so rather than having it smooth here and then threaded from here to here, I had to just purchase a grade 8 bolt that was threaded all the way through. The only problem with that is I used a 1/2-inch bolt and I had to kind of drill the bushing out a little bit to get it in there. So sometimes when I turn a tight corner, you'll hear a little thump. Actually, you more feel it in the floor than anything else now that it's kind of covered up. However, it's sturdy, it's not going anywhere, and I can live with it. And it does have that proper amount of play on the top part. So it's not that difficult to fix. The hardest part really is figuring out from the inside of the car where you need to drill to find the top end of that bolt. There is no, on most vehicles, there is no access to that. Some vehicles may have a small rubber knockout that you can peel out of the way and get to the top side of that bolt. However, in my experience, at least with the 2003 4th generation Taurus, there is no way to get into where that bolt comes out at the top. It's completely surrounded by sheet metal. You got the firewall on this side, this is the front of the car, and you got your floor pan here, and your blower motor is right here. So you have to kind of be careful where you drill. If it's on the driver's side, I feel sorry for you because there's a whole lot more in the way there. You've got a small fuse panel, you've got a whole bunch of wiring, and if it's the kind with the motorized foot pedals that you can move forward and back, oh, that's just more stuff in the way. Passenger side, on the other hand, not too difficult. So the bottom line is, if you break a subframe bolt, it's not the end of the world. A shop might charge you a ton of money to put it up on a lift and do basically what we're doing. If you really don't want to mess with creating that little slidable thing, you can get away with just threading a bolt, threading a nut and a good sized washer on top and bolting that into place. It won't have that little bit of free play. I don't think it would hurt anything. As long as it's a strong bolt and it's tight, and throw a second nut on top and take 2 wrenches and pull those 2 together, and that creates a lock nut to avoid any potential of that coming loose at a later date. Now, when you're welding in a floor pan, there are some caveats. Remember what I said about making sure you know what's underneath before you go drilling? That's especially important when you're welding. I have changed fuel filters on Ford Tauruses more than a couple of times. I know right where the fuel lines go. They run right along the passenger floorboard, right underneath where that rot happened to be. I wasn't thinking. I welded in there and I nicked the fuel line. Didn't know it at first. I had a small fire and thought, oh, a spark hit the carpet, no big deal, let's get some water. I wasn't videoing it, but my security cameras in the driveway caught this, and you can see my nephew panic. I'm yelling at him. There's no audio on this footage, but I'm yelling at him, run and get all the water, get all the water. He brings out a case of water, and we're squirting water bottles on it. Then we realize this is a gas fire. Water's not gonna help. So I jump in the car and I back it off the ramps as quick as I can while throwing the carpet down. Managed to smother the fire. Yes, we had a fire extinguisher on hand. No, I did not want to release it into the car because that's a whole other mess to have to clean up. So luckily we did not have to extinguish it with a fire extinguisher. But that is rookie mistake number 1 in any kind of welding. Make sure you know what's underneath and all around where you're welding before you start arcing that thing. So that sums up the little 2-part series. I changed the power steering rack, and no, I didn't get into serious detail on how to do it. I just brought up 3 major points that other videos didn't cover or didn't cover very well. Again, there's a card up here. If you don't see this card, you're either not logged into your YouTube account or you're watching on a smart TV, but the link will be in the description below as well if you're interested in that. Until next time, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Again, if you don't see a subscribe button, you may not be logged into your YouTube account. So log in, hit subscribe. All we do is car videos. They're all videos showing you how to do things that would cost you an arm and a leg to take it in and have a professional do it. Things that you may be able to do at home if you have tools and a helper. Hence the name of the channel, 2 Jacks. That's short for 2 Jacks, 2 Jack stands, and 2 jackasses. So until next time, see you later, and good luck.